Welcome to the Electric Coin Company quarterly live stream. This is our 2019 quarter two update. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Elise Hamden, Communications Manager here at the company. Today, members of the leadership team will provide updates about our quarter two progress. Those presentations will be followed by a Q&A where you can ask questions and receive answers directly from the team. Once we reach the top of the hour, we'll move the discussion over to the forum. So meet us over there if you'd like to keep talking. This live stream is being recorded and will be made available on YouTube right after this is over. So if you're not able to stick around for the entire discussion or you'd like to share it with a friend, stop back to our channel. With that, let's get started. Our presentation will cover this agenda: the quarter two activities, transparency and sustainability, product updates, regulatory developments, some marketing highlights, and our Q&A. With that, I'd like to introduce Zuko Wilcox, our founder and CEO. Zuko, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. So this is an update on things we've accomplished since our last quarterly live stream update a quarter ago. And there are two of our overarching strategies at the company are to drive adoption while maintaining quality. And one other thing I'll get to on the next slide. And things that we have accomplished in the last, okay, go back to the previous slide, there we go. Things that we have accomplished in the drive adoption while maintaining quality strategy in this quarter are that we did an extended trip in Asia and met with a lot of community people of all kinds and regulators and businesses in Korea, Japan, and Singapore. That was very interesting. I'll talk more about it later. Something else that we've accomplished in this quarter is that we launched the Earn Drop campaign with Coinbase. That was really successful too. I believe we're going to talk about that later in this. And then we did our core technical work, the most recent release of Zcash D 2.0.5, and several other important tools and technical support. And finally, we've been engaging with the broader privacy narrative in the public discourse, because I don't know if you've noticed, but privacy is increasingly in the headlines and it's increasingly on everyone's mind. And so we're trying to contribute to that narrative by promoting positive alternatives and positive visions, and also point out to people that this widespread, increasingly popular concern that Zcash is part of the solution. Next. The second part of our corporate strategy is what we call openness and sustainability. And to that end, in the last quarter, we've had several accomplishments. Of course, what we always do all along is consult with people from the community, and a lot of the people in the Zcash community are real experts in a lot of things, and they're also deeply embedded in many adjacent like friend communities. And so we're always sort of drinking in perspective information from all of them, and we've continued to do that throughout this period. And then two concrete steps we've made are that we've separated the name Zcash from the company and made a new website that shows that to everyone. And I take a moment to point out, I fielded many a question about, does this mean we're planning to move away from Zcash? And it does not mean that. The Electric Coin Company has currently no other operations or business or plans that have anything to do with anything that's not the Zcash coin. But the only reason we renamed and rebranded and we have a separate website is so that everyone else out in the world who's not looking so closely as you are can separate in their minds the difference between the company, our company, the Electric Coin Company, and Zcash, the coin. They are different. Zcash is bigger and will outlive the Electric Coin Company in all likelihood. And there are many other organizations and members and parts of the Zcash community that are not part of the Electric Coin Company. And so that's the only reason for the naming and the separation. But this is a really good step we've made is there's now a separate website for the company and for the coin, and we're starting to share the website with the Zcash Foundation. And the other thing we've done is made some progress and some public commitment toward a collective, what we call multi-sig governance. It was named this by Josh Cincinnati from the Zcash Foundation, but it doesn't actually involve multi-sig on chain anywhere, at least not yet. It just is the concept of checks and balances and a unanimous 2 out of 2 approval for governance changes. And we've made some public statements, and we've refined, iteratively refined the Zcash improvement proposal process to that end and some stuff like that. And you can follow up for details on that link. And finally, the Zcash community, a bunch of different people in the Zcash community have started talking about the fact that the Founders Reward is due to sunset itself at the end of 2020. And they've been saying, what shall we as the Zcash community do for funding and development and maintenance and all that support going forward? And I posted on the forum saying, I think it's important, since there's kind of an inherent conflict of interest, that the ECC is likely to be the beneficiary of any such development funding, because we're clearly have the best track record at developing and supporting the Zcash protocol so far. Therefore, it's important that we're not like leading the conversation, so that it's clear that this is the community's action and the community's decision that we might be the beneficiaries of if it goes that way. But we know more than anyone else knows, well, at least most probably anyone else knows, about a lot of things because of all of our ongoing contacts with the regulators and the exchanges and all the entrepreneurs and all the other companies and all that stuff and all the Zcash community members that we talk to all day long. So we're like answering questions and serving as advisors to the community by trying to respond to their questions and ideas on that forum thread. All right, that's all we've done that I can think of right now in that field.
All right, thanks, Zuko. Next up, I'd like to introduce DC, our COO. DC, take it away.
Great, thanks, Elise. Good afternoon, everyone. Here at the Electric Coin Company, we all love Bitcoin. And a lot of folks here have been involved with Bitcoin and have been interacting using Bitcoin since the very beginning. And one of the things that a lot of folks don't know is that the inventors of the Zero Coin protocol initially intended to build this privacy capability that's intrinsic to Zcash into Bitcoin itself. And way back when, the Bitcoin core developers essentially felt that it was potentially introducing too much risk to do so with Bitcoin, but Satoshi himself was cognizant of the privacy limitations in Bitcoin, and these manifest themselves in behaviors like change being returned to a new address each time you send a Bitcoin transaction. So Zcash was born, and it was given this, it was classified by folks in the industry as a so-called privacy coin. And I want to take a moment to really challenge that naming convention, because I'm going to assert here that Zcash is no more a privacy coin than Netscape was a privacy browser back in 1998 when I was in university. At that time, I remember vividly compiling the Stronghold capability into Apache to have an SSL-enabled server as part of a school project, and thinking that that capability would really open the door for e-commerce to really change the way business is done across the world. And that did eventually become the case, but it wasn't without a fight. The US government back then in the 90s basically declared war on cryptography and specifically forbade the export of strong encryption, classifying it as a munition. And there were some very sort of prominent battles fought on the policy front and the regulatory front back then to really stop this proliferation of encryption technology for the World Wide Web. But as time progressed, the thought leaders at the time were able to educate and convince regulators and policymakers that this strong encryption and privacy at a low layer in the internet stack was essential for the free and open expression of ideas and also to enable business and security on the internet. So it's with that in mind that we ask you to think about Zcash not as a privacy coin, but as a project that enables strong confidentiality at layer one, which we believe is essential for widespread ubiquitous adoption of blockchain technology going forward. Move on to the next slide, please, Elise. So for those that aren't doing this stuff every day, I'll give a little bit of a technical explanation of what transactions look like on an unencrypted blockchain like Bitcoin. The benefit of Bitcoin is that the transactions are basically baked into this immutable ledger that anyone can look at. And that means that any participant in the system can verify that a particular transaction is correct without needing to rely on a mutually trusted third party. So this is fantastic. The downside, though, is that anybody in the world can spin up a Bitcoin node and download the entire blockchain and analyze that information and make some very potentially risky inferences or correlations by analyzing the flow of transactions and tying those transactions to real world identities of people. By contrast, the Zcash protocol encrypts the data on the blockchain such that the details of the transaction are not known to random people or random nation states who might be siphoning and hoovering up that blockchain data. And this is where we get a lot of concern from folks that say, well, if Zcash, there's a perception that Zcash is anonymous and it's dangerous because of that. But the Zcash protocol also provides a mechanism by which the party making a transaction can choose to share details of that transaction with a counterparty, with a regulator, or with law enforcement, but only if they choose to do so. So this is a really important paradigm shift, and I think that it's going to be a prerequisite for widespread adoption of this technology. It's very, very easy to, well, it's difficult, but we've done it in terms of building a secure layer one protocol. And once you have a secure layer one protocol, you can share information selectively quite easily. It's difficult to do the opposite of that, which is to start with a totally transparent base layer protocol and then try to add privacy and confidentiality on at higher levels in the stack. So stay tuned. I think that we're starting to see regulators and policymakers kind of get over the initial shock and fear about technology that they don't understand. And I think they're starting to recognize that this connection of associating and understanding that Zcash really is the HTTPS of blockchain is a message that resonates. So with that, I'll kick it back to you, Elise. I do have one suggestion. That's that I know we're going to do a Q&A at the end. I think it would be handy if we could get the link in front of people earlier in the presentation so that they can start adding questions as we go. So something that maybe we can splash up here as we dig into the next session. Thanks.
Thanks, DC. Okay, next I'd like to introduce Andy Murray, our CFO, to talk about transparency and sustainability. Andy, take it away.
Excellent. Thanks, Elise. Thank you for joining the call again today. On May 14th, 2019, we released a transparency report, and this report can be found on the Electric Coin Company blog. The purpose of the transparency report is in support of our objective to provide openness, transparency, add clarity to the confusion on the amount of coins the company receives, and provide visibility into how those coins are used. Since this report is available for review, for this live stream, I will focus on some key highlights from the second half of 2018. First, the summary of some of the key items. The Electric Coin Company and its employees have been receiving approximately 4.2% of the total mining rewards, using a price of approximately $60 per ZEC, which was the price range at the time of issuing the report. The company and its employees have been receiving approximately $550,000 per month. $550,000 per month. The company's operating cost in the second half of 2018 averaged about $700,000 per month. An additional $180,000 a month was used for employee compensation during the period, demonstrating that the company has been running at a significant deficit. The Zcash received from the Electric Coin Company share of mining rewards was primarily used to fund R&D, engineering, global adoption efforts, audits, trademark protection, and regulatory relations. The company holds approximately $5 million worth of US dollars in Zcash. Founders rewards participants recently agreed to a dilution effective in June 2019 to ensure the financial sustainability of the electric coin company. Now, I will step through some of the specific items in the report. Currently, the Zcash block reward is 12.5 Zcash ZEC, and blocks are mined every 2.5 minutes. Miners receive 10 ZECs plus transaction fees, which is about 80% of the block reward. The remaining 2.5 ZEC are split among various parties and are collectively called the Founders Reward, or FR. The FR will expire in October 2020. At that time, block rewards will also be halved to 6.25. The halvening will continue to occur every 4 years thereafter. The current distribution of FR is broken down as follows: 80% to miners, 12.8% to founders and vested employees, 3% to Zcash Foundation, 2.8% to the Electric Coin Company, and 1.4% additional ECC employee compensation. You can find greater detail on these groupings in the report. Since ECC received 2.8% of the FR, the question is, okay, what was that spent on? The account summaries for the second half of 2018 are 62% employee wages, 10% general and administrative expenses, 9% awareness and education, 7% external security and auditing, 6% consulting, 3.5% software, and 2.5% to travel expenses. Now, these are good groupings for those accounting types, but it doesn't really say what we have been spending the money on. While I mentioned these briefly before, the areas of focus for dollars spent in support of our objective to drive adoption while maintaining quality include research and development, engineering, awareness and education, which, by the way, you will see in the report that this area is one of the largest descriptions. So I think you know what group was in charge of releasing the report. Third-party adoptions, regulatory relations, and an area we also feel is very important, that's investing in the team. Investing in the team would include hiring with the addition of some key positions throughout the second half of 2018. We also added some efforts in human resources. And this is not just the addition of a support function, but an effort to step up and drive creation of benefit structure that will help support the company to be competitive in the marketplace. Also, the establishment of a board of directors. As a company evolves, it becomes more important to add resources such as a board of directors to provide guidance and governance. We are very pleased with the talent that has joined our board. So let's touch on financial sustainability. I mentioned that the company has been operating at a deficit as we continue to average approximately $700,000 a month in USD expenses, or approximately $880,000 a month, including employee compensation paid in ZEC, still using the ZEC price of $60. The company income of 6,157 ZEC per month, plus the approximate 3,000 ZEC for employee compensation, provides the company with about $550,000 at the ZEC price, $60 ZEC price. As a result of the deficit and market uncertainty, the company reduced spending in a number of areas to adjust for this. To address this deficit situation, we approached the FR recipients to request dilution in order to allocate additional funds to allow the Electric Coin Company the ability to continue to operate and invest in Zcash R&D, engineering, and adoption. We were pleased with the support we received from our shareholders in endorsing the dilution, which will take place in June. This information represents the share of mining rewards allocated following the June dilution. Miners at 80% with no change. Founders and vested employees, 9.6%, down from 12.8%. Zcash Foundation, 2.2%, down from 3%. Electric Coin Company, 5.75%, up from 2.8%. Additional ECC compensation, 2.45%, up from 1.4%. The change in ECC funding will allow us to sustain the R&D and engineering while investing in new areas to grow adoption. The change in the ECC employee amount includes an allocation for new units to provide incentive for future recruitment and retention of employees. Thank you. And now I turn it back to you, Lise.
All right, thanks a lot, Andy. I appreciate it. Up next, Nathan Wilcox, our CTO. Nathan, you ready to take it away?
Yep. Show me the
Thanks.
slide.
All right.
Okay.
There you go.
So product development updates. We've got 4 things here for you. These are the 4 biggest things. So we've made progress on supporting shielded Zcash transfers in light clients. We introduced a new consensus rule that protects the monetary supply in the event of a counterfeiting compromise. Oh, can you back up 1 slide? And in support of that change, we've also released what's called a migration tool, which helps users safely transfer funds from old Sprout addresses up to the new Sapling addresses. And then we've been at work on NU2 Blossom, the next upcoming upgrade, and we are excited to be reaching a point with NU3 where we're going to begin the feature work for that upgrade. Also, NU3 doesn't yet have a fun name, and so that's something we might be reaching out to the community about soon here now. So now let's go to light client improvements. So we've released a reference wallet, and the team behind that has been focused on engaging with partners to show them the reference wallet and ensure that it provides what those vendors need to roll out shielded support to their users. And these are specifically wallets, like mobile wallets especially. So recently we've addressed a reorganization bug that was in Light Wallet D, which is a backend component for that supports this Light Wallet use case. And then we've implemented part of interoperability between transparent and shielded addresses. Those are called T and Z addresses, because it's clear that providing full support for managing transparent addresses is crucial for adoption. So the piece we have working now is the Light Wallet can send from shielded addresses to T addresses. And this whole time we've been driving changes to the stack that's used in our reference wallet based on explicit conversations with wallet vendors who are working with us to roll out shielded support. Some upcoming changes, we're going to be making changes to Light Wallet D in order to make it more robust for production environments. It's not quite ready for that yet. And then we're going to complete T to Z interoperability so that the Light wallet will be able to send to or from either kind of address, and that will provide full T address support. And we'll be continuing to work with specific partners. There's another piece that is not on this slide, but it's important to point out. These things give us full functionality, but the currently supported platform is only Android, and we're looking into supporting iOS because that seems like it will help roll out shielded support into production wallets. So next slide. Okay, so back in the main Zcash D protocol with the current version, with the 2.05 release, we have activated a new consensus rule. This is a consensus rule that only makes a difference in the event of an active compromise of either of any of the shielded pools. We are not aware of any active compromise of any shielded pools, but we were aware of a vulnerability in the Sprout pool, which is the older version, and that vulnerability has been completely mitigated as of the activation of sapling. So this rule, what it does moving forward in the future, if there is ever a vulnerability that's compromised in a shielded pool such that counterfeiting can occur, this rule will protect the overall monetary supply moving forward. So it's basically a redundant sort of belt and suspenders safety check to ensure the emission curve of Zcash follows the plan, even in the event of those kinds of compromises. And then related to that, there's a tool that we've released for users to help them move their funds from Sprout to Sapling. That's been possible ever since Sapling activated, but we've suggested to most users to wait for this tool. And the reason is if you use this tool, you'll have better privacy protections. And also the more people use this tool, the better the privacy results are for everyone else using the tool. And it's also worth noting that this is our implementation that ships in Zcash D, so it's sort of the standard tool, but there has been a tool available in Zec Wallet, and we collaborated to make sure the designs were similar enough to each other that we would have some of the same privacy protections or guarantees. So those are changes recently as of the 2.05 release. So next slide. So that brings up upcoming upgrades. So the next one in the pipeline is NU2 Blossom, and that will activate shorter block target spacing. So what that means ideally is that the network will have a higher capacity for processing transactions per time. That's in the works. And moving on to NU3, we've been in this phase of reviewing and analyzing ZIP proposals. So these are proposals from either inside the company or from contributors outside the company for ways to improve the Zcash protocol. And there were about 8 that were submitted by the end of May. And so according to our upgrade plan, the next step is for the company to select which of those we want to commit to supporting. So about half of them were supported, were submitted from outside contributors, which is super exciting. And we reviewed all of the 8, and we have been paying careful attention to how we are prioritizing the company's efforts. And the one that we are, so we're only committing as a company to designing and implementing a single one, which is here. It's called Shielded Coinbase. We think that might help with adoption of shielded Zcash for miners. So that will be interesting to see the impact of that. However, all of the submissions were good, like ideas we like or support. Some of them were incomplete, so we didn't feel like they were ready yet for NU3. And some of them we liked, and they were well specified, but we didn't want to commit our engineering resources to them at this point. But there's one in particular that we are really excited about, and we're hoping we can find other developers who are willing to show up and work on the design and implementation of that. And that one is part of the Fly client protocol, and there's a more specific piece that could be implemented into the Zcash protocol based on what's called Merkle mountain ranges. So we'll be looking into that over the next week or so to see if we can find people interested in contributing to that. So that brings us to the next slide. This next slide is kind of a view of further into the future. So NU4 would be the next upgrade after NU3. NU3 should activate in April of 2020, and NU4 should activate in October of 2020. The deadline for submitting zip drafts, so this is like the first step to making a proposal to upgrade the protocol in time for NU4, is the end of August. The earlier drafts show up, the better. And in fact, a lot of the a lot of the proposals submitted to NU3 that are incomplete but are still good ideas. We're hoping that we can help the contributors prepare those for NU4. So like I said, the big picture thing here in terms of the progress of the upgrades is that NU3, we're about ready to commit to that proposed change, and also suss out if we can collaborate with other developers on some changes. And tangentially, there's a big picture thing about openness and collaboration here, which is something Zuko mentioned earlier, which has been dubbed 2 of 2 multi-sig governance. So again, it's not actual multi-sig technology, it's just a governance structure that we want to put into place before the NU4 development process starts. And this is an example of our approach to governance here at the company, where we want to improve governance of the Zcash protocol in order to make it sustainable in the very long term. But we want to do that through taking reasonable steps at each stage and sort of ratcheting up the governance and the openness and the collaboration. So we're beginning to see that, you know, the foundation is showing up to participate with us in this governance structure. And they're also hiring technical folks, and they will have their own node implementation fairly soon now. And we also see other folks contributing zips who are interested in augmenting the Zcash protocol. So it's super exciting to see 3 or 4 different teams now who are actively contributing to improving the Zcash protocol. And so I think that's it for the product updates, unless I forgot a slide. Is there one
No,
more?
that's right. Thanks,
Okay,
Nate.
thanks.
That is exciting. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Zuko to talk about regulatory issues.
Okay. How much time do I have? Okay.
You have a good 5 minutes.
So from the beginning, we had the hearts and minds strategy with regard to regulatory, which is that we're going to engage with regulators and law enforcement and policymakers and the public and the, you know, the voters and the people in the public discourse. And we're going to say that privacy is a social virtue, not a vice, and that we share values. We want to protect people from theft and fraud. We want a prosperous economy. We want stability. And we've been working on this all along. I'm going to tell you a bunch of details, but before I do, I want to say the world has really caught up to us, right? When we started this 4 years ago, and when the Zcash community who are out there right now watching this got on board when they first heard about Zcash, it was considered to be fringe or scary or alternative. But today, it's the mainstream conversation is that we need better privacy and safety against exploitation of our data. So anyway, the current regulatory situation is really complicated in terms of how many different regulators there are in how many different countries. Like there are dozens or more of regulators just in the United States alone that might have some influence over how people are allowed to use Zcash in different kinds of financial businesses. And then there are regulators in all these different countries. And there are definitely some problems with, or some challenges, such as the fact that Zcash is currently not listed on any exchanges in Japan. And it was just recently announced, or well, actually it wasn't announced, it was recently leaked that BitOasis, which serves UAE and I think Kuwait and some other countries in the Middle East, is delisting Zcash. And we we were already in contact with those folks, BitOasis, and we've reached out to BitOasis and the Japanese exchanges and the JCVEA, which is the self-regulatory organization in Japan that writes the rules. It's an organization that's just a private voluntary organization made up of the Japanese exchanges, and they write the rules that all the Japanese exchanges then that are the members are then expected to comply with. So we're working with them and with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, because Singapore is a really interesting, innovative place. We're continuing to work with the New York Department of Financial Services. As you know, we reached out to them years ago now and explained about the new technology and its impacts. And we're delighted to then find out that NYDFS whitelisted Zcash as one of the few coins that already have their approval for use for financial institutions to serve to New Yorkers. We're continuing to do that. A couple of weeks ago, we were invited to give a talk at a summit that was organized by the Silicon Valley VC firm, Andreessen Horowitz, abbreviated A16Z. And they had assembled, they'd invited a whole bunch of senior regulators from all the different departments. Like I said, there's a lot of different departments. So there's Department of Justice and all the myriad arms of law enforcement. There's treasuries, and there's all the other financial regulators like CFTC, SEC, CFPB, and more. And so there was a room full of probably 75 senior United States officials there. And we gave a talk that, for one thing, we demonstrated how zero knowledge proofs work using cards with bits written on them, ones and zeros. I'll show you sometime. It's great. We should have done it today. We'll do it next time. And then, and that caused them all to stop checking their email and start paying attention, because it was the only thing that happened that day that wasn't just talking and slides. And then I said that, when HTTPS was new, it was considered to be scary, and there was a conflict between civil liberties and on the one side, and then law enforcement and national security on the other side. And that conflict and that policy debate and that struggle dragged on for many, many years. But then the struggle ended because HTTPS started getting used for commerce. And at that point, it was clear that there was no alternative but to make commerce be strongly protected in order to protect the consumers and the businesses. And so I said that this is the same kind of process that I expect to happen with blockchain, and that the encryption and the zero knowledge proof technology that we've pioneered may go further than just making blockchains safe for people to express ideas and engage in commerce safely, but may also the zero knowledge proof technology may get extended and applied to other problems, like the ongoing crisis of database breaches that are threatening our institutions. And for the most part, that they seemed very interested. They were the government officials present were a lot less. They were a lot more open-minded than you might imagine. They're very interested in new technologies, and they're very interested in the argument that new technologies are going to have upsides for society as well as downsides, and that they want to engage with it and be ahead of the curve. We're also continuing to engage with the regulators in UK, which is the Financial Conduct Authority of the UK. And then there's this thing called the FATF. Like I say, there's quite the alphabet soup. The FATF stands for the Financial Action Task Force, and that's a really interesting thing because it's not a regulator. It has no authority because it doesn't belong to any government. It's not part of any government. It's just the advisory body of all of the national financial regulators of all the major countries that get together, and they write down their beliefs about what financial regulations all good countries ought to implement. And then they have no enforcement power, but traditionally all the major Western countries then go and implement those rules. And so we show up at their meetings and speak up when the topics touch on issues that we're expert about. And there's a really interesting thing going on right now, which is that the FATF is poised to mandate that cryptocurrency companies in all of their countries, what they can't mandate. They're poised to recommend that all of the countries involved mandate that cryptocurrency companies in their country have to abide by this thing called the travel rule. And I think I'm going to try to skip explaining it. It's crazy. Look it up. It could turn out to be a huge deal for the entire cryptocurrency industry, because in order to implement the travel rule, a transparent blockchain like Bitcoin and Ethereum, it's not obvious that you can do that. How to do it would be, it's really not clear it's possible at all, or if it would be really hard, or how it would work. An encrypted blockchain like Zcash, it's dead easy. Like, that's obvious what you do to satisfy the travel rule. So I really don't want the FATF to put all of the cryptocurrency companies in the world out of business. That would be terrible for our mission. But the fact that this law or this rule can't be satisfied with transparent blockchains and can easily be satisfied with encrypted blockchains is a really good mind opener for the regulators, to point out to them that encryption technology has like all kinds of trade-offs and different consequences, some of which are good for their purposes. Oh yeah, and to the next point, that's a very similar thing is playing out in Europe, where the GDPR regulation has taken effect as of, I think, 1 year ago. And people are still grappling with the consequences of this. The GDPR regulation is very broad and makes a bunch of sweeping requirements of all companies that have anything to do with European citizens' data. And there's basically, as far as I understand from talking to GDPR law experts, there's just no good way to use a fully transparent blockchain and abide by that regulation. Whereas it actually is totally compatible to use an encrypted blockchain to satisfy the GDPR requirements. And again, I don't want the GDPR to cause like all Europeans to lose access to Bitcoin. That would be a terrible setback for our mission. But I really want both entrepreneurs and policymakers and regulators and law enforcement worldwide to realize, oh, there's multiple data points here where this modern innovative encryption technology has consequences, legal and regulatory consequences that we didn't expect. We need to understand it better going forward. Finally, we're also engaged with a couple of more groups. One's called Global Digital Finance, and then our company, the Electric Coin Company, has always been a donor and supporter to Coin Center, which is a nonprofit located in Washington, D.C. that has is probably, I think, a good part of the reason why the regulations and laws that have come out of Washington, D.C. Have not sucked over the last couple of 3-4 years. For quite a while now, Coin Center has been educating the people in Washington, D.C. about blockchain technology and how they could regulate it wisely. And I think that's made a huge positive difference to the world. Okay, what's next? Oh yeah, so we went on a trip to Japan, South Korea, Singapore. These are 3 places where cryptocurrencies are really important, and there's very different and interesting social and financial and regulatory regimes going on, and we learned a lot. We met a lot of people and drank in a lot of information, gave a few talks and presentations. One thing we learned is that Zcash is little understood. It's, for the most part, people that we talked to, there were the hardcore Zcash fans who showed up at the meetups, but when we would go to like companies and regulators and just general experts in the industry and would talk to them, they wouldn't really be familiar with Zcash. They've just heard of it. The regulators in Japan were surprisingly like open-minded and eager to engage with us and learn and consider different proposals. So that was fun. And one thing that we learned, which I've always been told, but now I have firsthand experience, is that nothing happens in Japan until you put your feet on the ground in Japan. Like remote video conferencing just doesn't move anything very fast. So we have more work to do there. We've established a bunch of relationships with different elements of the community and entrepreneurs and the regulatory bodies in those countries. And hopefully we'll have some good results to report to you guys in the next live stream a quarter from now. Next slide, please, Elise.
I think you're all done.
All right. Thanks for listening.
All right. Thanks for doing that. Thanks for giving us that update, Zuko. I get to tell you about something very fun, the success of the Earn Zcash campaign. It was very successful, and we have a blog post on our website that provides some detail about this, but some of the highlights include the fact that over 500,000 people viewed the Zcash videos. That means that we're driving adoption through education and educating the wider community about Zcash, which is very exciting. 58% of people who earn Zcash are still holding their Zcash. And so that's a pretty impressive number. And 4.7% there have acquired additional Zcash after earning through this Earn campaign. So that's a 30-day NPS of 83, which is a way of measuring how, like a customer loyalty, a loyalty to the product. So that is very impressive, and we're excited about that. So this is the first half of the campaign. The second half is coming up, so watch for information about that. Also, we wanted to let you know that our user education continues to be a priority for us. So we continue to maintain and refine the user documentation, help coordinate workshops like those for ZCon 1. There are 9 of those that we've been working on, and assisting the foundation with organizational support. And of course, the weekly updates that we post in the forum and then share across our channel. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at those. If not, every Friday you can watch for those. And we also share those on Blockfolio as well. Also, among the other fun things that were mentioned in the live stream, Zuko mentioned that we have a new website and new branding, all kinds of new stuff. So stop out to our website and take a look at electriccoin.co. And that brings us up to the Q&A. So let's run out there and see what the questions are. Let's see. First question for Andy. Andy, we have a question about the transparency report. Do you want to go ahead and read that question and then answer that?
Yeah, right as I was looking at it, it moved off my screen. So.
Oh, okay. I can read it.
No, I got it now. Transparency report shows rebalanced amounts to sustain the ECC until 2020. Would that be a realistic balance amount to sustain ECC after 2020? Good question. So many variables come into play in answering this question. Let's back up and say, okay, what was the objective of the rebalancing? And the objective of the rebalancing was to de-risk the financial sustainability to October 2020. And we're confident that we have accomplished that objective. Now, with that said, depending upon the price of the ZEC as we go forward, certainly there could be some buildup and some additional financial resources for us to de-risk things for a period forward, but it doesn't eliminate risk indefinitely going forward. The amount of months that we'll be able to carry forward after October 2020 will really come into play dependent upon the price of the ZEC and the initiatives that we undertake as far as the expenses associated with those initiatives in between now and then.
All right, thanks a lot.
I read the question. Can I interrupt?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I read the question as what if ECC got that amount of ZEC after 2020? Would it be sustainable for ECC? I think that's what they're asking.
Really? Would be realistic balance. Okay, I didn't read into that there, Zuko.
All right.
Sorry, do you want to answer it or do you want me to answer it?
Well, my answer is yes, we can keep doing the things we've done so far for the amount of money we've spent on it so far. But with more money, we could do a lot more things.
See, that's why you're the CEO.
That's why you're the CFO.
Thanks,
All right, way to team up, guys. Next question up is for Nathan. Why wasn't Bolt selected for NU3? You want to give that one a try?
Yes. So I kind of want to answer it a slightly roundabout way. So one is, as we're going through the ZIP process, this is the first time we've coordinated with the foundation on the process, and we're learning ways to improve the process. So one of the confusions is the distinction between zips that either the company or the foundation believe are like good ideas and plausible, versus zips that are good ideas, plausible, and so well specified that it's clear how to evaluate them in the protocol. And then the fourth thing is who is going to spend the effort to implement them. So a lot of the zips are in different categories. With Bolt, so Bolt is a second layer protocol that has strong privacy guarantees built in, that could enable use cases where users might be able to send transactions with low latency and very low fees through service providers, and yet the service providers may not be able to determine which other users they are interacting with, ideally. So Bolt is super exciting. It totally fits this like standard of quality that Zcash has. The issue with that proposal is that the second layer protocol is well specified, but how to integrate it with Zcash isn't yet fully specified enough for us to move forward with it. So it's something we definitely want to see. And in fact, we hope that we can engage with IO at Bolt Labs and anyone else interested and get all of the prerequisites ready in time for NU4. So basically, we do want to help with that. It just wasn't fully ready in time for NU3.
All right, Nathan, don't go away.
Okay.
I have another question waiting for you. What is the progress of Kaizen networks on private multisig? How important is multisig development for Zcash?
So the progress there is that there is a zip proposed. The interesting thing about that zip is that it doesn't require changes to the consensus protocol. So that is one reason we kind of didn't consider it for our effort on NU3. However, we also want to make sure that what is being proposed there fits use cases well that we know are necessary. So that sort of segues to the second question. Multisig is super important for some use cases. There's kind of a little tangent that there's some distinctions between like threshold signatures or multisig, and some of those details really matter for use cases. So some of the use cases we are aware of involve custodian products, but interestingly, some custodian products do not rely on that. So all of this to say, that is a development we're very interested in. We want to make sure it's supporting use cases well, and we also want to collaborate to bring that to Zcash.
All right, thank you very much. So Nathan, it's a good thing you're here today because we have another question for you.
Yep.
The question is, are there a number of wallet partners who have committed to adding Z addresses? Are there any exchanges working on it as well?
Yeah, so in terms of wallet partners, there are actually, I think, 3 wallets I can think of, end user facing wallets that exist today that have announced Zcash support. So one is Zepio, one is Zec Wallet, and oh no, the third one was almost there, Garda. So that's quite a commitment to have shipped support for the feature, and that's awesome. The partners, so we kind of want to hit a few goals. We want to be enabling wallets to be able to use our open source efforts to ship shielded support. And we've seen that, in those 3 cases through different strategies. So Zec Wallet just wraps our full node. Garda has done a lot of their own implementation work relying on our spec. And I think Zepio is also wrapping a full node. Earlier, when I was mentioning our light client team's work with partners, right now we are prioritizing working with some specific partners who we believe have a large reach and a large impact, but we can't publicly comment on any commitments yet. So it's something we're actively putting effort into, and I feel hopeful about. But we're also seeing these benefits coming off in these other wallet cases. The second question about exchanges, this is totally an example of we are doing important work that hasn't even made the slides because it's hard to fit everything we're doing into few slides, but we frequently work with exchanges across the board, and we always talk about shielded support. And it seems like for several exchanges, the blockers really boil down to technical effort. It seems like some of the challenges, so different exchanges tend to have their own tech stacks and the requirements can vary. Whereas with the wallet use cases, the sort of narrow scope of use cases is clearer. So for that reason, I expect wallet support to come out first. There's another kind of business strategy issue where exchanges, if an exchange supported shielded deposit or withdrawal, one question is where would the users withdraw to? And up until like the past month, there hasn't been many wallets. The only one I was aware of like a month or more ago would be Zec Wallet that even supported that. So I'm hopeful that getting shielded support into the literal palms of users can start stimulating that demand.
Okay, and I think we have time for one more question. And Nathan, you're the popular one today. So this is for you, but others can jump in too. The question is, what education can be done to get users to shift those funds out of old Sprout addresses?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually it is an interesting thing to note that coins haven't moved. It could partially be because of our messaging suggesting people wait for this migration tool. It is here now, so I do think we should engage in education, and hopefully like the community and the foundation might also do that and suggest now's a great time, sapling is way better in terms of performance, in terms of mobile support that's coming, and in terms of security. So I can't think of a reason to leave funds in Sprout addresses unless there are users who just want to hold their Zcash and they don't want to be bothered to move things. So I think what we should do is do an education push and give it some time since the migration tool just came out. And if we see there's still funds sitting there for a long time, then I think we should begin doing user research to figure out who is doing that and why. Like that would be a mystery for me if funds stay there for a long
Nathan,
time.
I've got a point of view on that from reading Reddit and other forums, and it seems that we've got a lot of folks that are using Zec Wallet and struggling to get the entire blockchain downloaded due to the potential lack of solid internet connectivity in their areas. So the fact that as it stands today, the only way to migrate your funds out of the Sprout pool is to use a wallet or a full node from the CLI, or a wallet that lands on top of a full node. I think that's a blocker. So I do expect, as we see the Garda folks have launched the imminent release of their light shielded wallet, and we know that there are others to follow. I think that'll really be a big enabler for making it easy for folks to move their funds from the Sprout pool to the sapling pool without needing to run their own full node.
Interesting. That's yeah. We should verify that hypothesis and then see how we can help.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to the top of the hour, and I'm impressed that we are exactly at the top of the hour. So thank you to everyone here who participated by speaking, and also to all of you in the community who posted questions in the chat. if we didn't get to your question during this live stream, we are going to jump over to the forum and continue to discuss anything that you'd like to over there. So join us over there. We'll post the questions and responses, and we look forward to interacting with you there. Also, join us again in September when we have the next live stream coming up. In the meantime, feel free to reach out on the forum or on Twitter at ElectricCoinCo or by email. We look forward to talking with you again in the future, and we're all in it together. So thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Elise. Bye.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Ryan.
Yeah, no sweat.
All right, so I'm gonna